The night air was bitter cold when Officer Nathan Doyle received the call. The dispatcher's voice over the radio was tight, urgent. There'd been a report of possible animal cruelty at an old warehouse in the industrial district. Something about illegal captivity, abandoned cages, and disturbing noises. Nathan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. His partner Cale, a loyal and highly trained German shepherd, stirred beside him in the patrol car, ears perked and alert. It was as if he already sensed what lay ahead. Without hesitation, Nathan responded, "Officer Doyle en route," and hit the lights. The streets were nearly empty as he drove, shadows stretching long beneath the flickering street lamps. When he finally arrived at the location, the building looked like it had been forgotten by time walls crumbling, the metal siding rusted and warped. It looked like the kind of place people passed by but never dared to enter, but something was in there. Nathan felt it. Cale did too. As soon as Nathan stepped out of the vehicle, Cale leapt down and began sniffing the air with a focused intensity. Nathan followed close behind, the stench of rust, oil, and decay hitting his nose as he approached the building. The old metal door groaned in protest as he pushed it open, its creak echoing through the hollow space like a scream. Inside, the warehouse was vast and eerily silent. Moonlight filtered through the broken windows, casting long streaks of gray across the cracked concrete floor. It looked like no one had been there in years, yet the hairs on Nathan's neck stood up. Something was watching. Then, barely audible above the creaks of the wind, came a sound, a soft, trembling whimper. Nathan stopped in his tracks. Kyle froze too, his ears swiveling like radar. They locked eyes, both of them knowing they weren't alone. Heart pounding, Nathan raised his flashlight and followed the sound to the far corner of the warehouse, where shadows pooled thickest. That's when he saw it. A small German shepherd puppy curled inside a rusted cage, its tiny body shaking violently. Its eyes were wide with terror, its paws pressed desperately against the bars as if pleading for anyone to help. Nathan's chest tightened. He approached slowly, speaking in a low, calming tone to avoid scaring the little one further. "Hey, buddy, it's okay now. I've got you." The cage was a mess wrapped in thick, rust-covered chains with a padlock that hadn't been touched in years. Whoever had done this didn't just want to keep the puppy inside, they wanted to make sure it never got out. Nathan knelt, examining the lock as the pup whimpered again, its nose pressed between the bars, searching for warmth. But just as he reached into his belt for tools to cut the chains, Cal's growl ripped through the silence. It was deep, guttural, and low, the kind of growl that only came when real danger was near. Nathan's instincts kicked in. He didn't see anything at first, but Cale's rigid stance and flared nostrils told him all he needed to know. They weren't alone. Someone or something was in that warehouse with them. Nathan placed a steady hand on his holster, eyes sweeping across the darkness as he shielded the cage with his body. That quiet cry for help had led him to something much bigger than a stray dog, and whatever it was, it had been waiting. Nathan stayed crouched near the cage, one hand on the cold floor, the other near his weapon, heart pounding hard enough that he could feel it in his ears. Taylor remained still but alert, every muscle coiled, his deep growl a low drumbeat in the background. Nathan didn't move, not yet. Something felt wrong, heavier than just the presence of a neglected puppy. The air inside the warehouse was thick, almost humming with tension, like the moment before a storm breaks. He heard it then, a scrape, faint but clear, like a boot dragging over concrete. It came from the shadows at the far end of the building. Nathan's instincts kicked into overdrive. His voice was steady but firm. "Police. If someone's in here, step out now." No answer. Just the echo of his own voice bouncing off rusted beams. Kaylee growled again, louder this time. Then, from the darkness, something shifted a dark shape, low to the ground, moved between broken machinery. Nathan caught just the slightest glimpse before it disappeared again, silent and fast. His grip on his flashlight tightened. This wasn't just about animal cruelty anymore. Someone was here, and they weren't running, they were watching. As the silence dragged out, Nathan made a choice. He turned back toward the cage, keeping his body between the puppy and the dark corners of the warehouse. He couldn't leave the pup exposed. He pulled a bolt cutter from his belt and got to work on the chains, cutting quickly, every sound from the metal echoing like a gunshot in the stillness. The lock finally gave way with a loud crack, and the cage door creaked open. The puppy didn't move. It just stared at him, still trembling, too scared to trust freedom. Nathan reached out, gently scooping the little dog into his arms, his voice barely more than a whisper. "You're safe now." But before he could take a step back, another sound sliced through the air, a loud crash, metal slamming against metal. Kyle barked, fierce and sharp, lunging toward the noise. Nathan turned, flashlight up, gun drawn. What he saw stopped him cold. Two glowing eyes reflected back at him from the shadows, and then stepped forward a full-grown German shepherd, its fur bristling, posture low and stiff, a deep growl vibrating from its throat. Teeth bared. Not a stray, not a lost pet, a mother, and she was furious. Nathan didn't fire. He didn't yell. He just stood there, the trembling puppy in his arms, as the mother dog advanced a step. Cale was ready to defend, his body rigid beside Nathan, but Nathan held up a hand to calm him. "Easy," he said quietly. The mother's eyes flicked from him to Kyle and then to the pup. Nathan saw recognition. She wasn't attacking, she was warning. Her stance, tense and unrelenting, wasn't one of aggression, it was protection. She'd been trapped here too, probably caged, beaten, starved, and now someone had her baby. Of course she was ready to fight. Nathan lowered his gun slowly, shifting his weight to show he meant no harm. The puppy whimpered in his arms, and her ears perked up. For a moment, nothing moved. Then she took another step. Nathan didn't retreat. Instead, he spoke to her the same way he would to Kyle. Gentle, steady. "I'm getting him out," he said. She hesitated, torn between fear and instinct. Then, just when the tension seemed to ease, another crash rang out from the other side of the warehouse, this time footsteps, fast and heavy. The mother's growl snapped back into focus, and she stepped forward again, this time not toward her pup but toward the threat. Whatever or whoever was coming now, she wasn't letting them near her baby, and neither was Nathan. The sound of boots striking the concrete grew louder, faster, closer. Nathan's body went still, every nerve wired tight. Whoever was inside with them wasn't trying to stay hidden anymore. They were coming straight for him, and they weren't alone. The mother dog growled low in her throat, positioning herself in front of Nathan and her pup without hesitation, a living shield forged from instinct and fury. Cal matched her posture beside them, his growl like a warning siren, deep and vibrating through the warehouse walls. Nathan tightened his hold on the trembling puppy, shifted his stance, and reached for his radio. But before he could key it, a harsh voice cut through the dark. "Put the damn dog down." Nathan whipped his flashlight toward the voice and saw a figure stepping from the shadows, broad-shouldered, wearing a muddy jacket and a face half hidden under a filthy cap. His stance screamed aggression. Behind him, another figure lurked, just out of full view. 2 men, at least. Nathan's heart sank. This wasn't random. These men were tied to the cages, the chains, the cruelty, and now they were caught. Nathan didn't flinch. "You've got about 3 seconds to back off," he said coldly. "Gun steady." Kyle let out another sharp bark, and the mother dog snarled beside him. The first man didn't retreat. In fact, he stepped closer, a sneer on his face. "You cops always think you're in control," he spat, glancing at his partner. "But you don't know what you walked into." And in that moment, it clicked. The locked cages, the scars on the mother dog, the remote warehouse. This wasn't just a case of abuse. This was a dog-fighting ring. Organized, hidden, dangerous. Nathan shifted slightly, recalculating everything. The exit was too far. He was outnumbered, and he was holding a terrified, defenseless pup. Then, without warning, the man lunged. His hands shot out, reaching for Nathan's arm. Nathan reacted on instinct, twisting to the side while keeping the puppy protected against his chest. The attacker stumbled just enough, and Cale, already coiled, launched. With a vicious snarl, Kyle leapt, his jaws clamping down on the man's arm. The man screamed in pain, crashing to the ground as he thrashed to free himself. But Cal held firm, teeth locked deep, growling like thunder. Nathan had no time to process it because the second man moved. From the corner of his eye, Nathan saw him reaching under his jacket. Gun. Without thinking, Nathan dropped low, tightened his grip on the puppy, and fired a single warning shot into the air. The sound exploded through the warehouse, echoing off the rusted walls. The second man froze, his hand just inches from his weapon. "Drop it!" Nathan barked, voice sharp and steady. The man hesitated, eyes darting between the gun aimed at his chest and the dogs ready to tear him apart. Blood dripped from his partner's arm. Cal, still holding fast. The mother dog hadn't moved an inch, her body low, growl constant, her eyes fixed on the threat. It was a standoff, seconds stretched like hours. Finally, The second man's confidence cracked. He slowly raised his hands and let the weapon clatter to the floor. All right, he muttered. Call off your damn dogs, but Nathan didn't. Not yet. Relief tried to find its way into Nathan's chest as the second man surrendered, but it was fleeting because the mother dog wasn't done. Her growl didn't fade. In fact, it deepened. The tension in her muscles didn't ease. It coiled tighter, no longer directed at the new threat, but at the one already on the ground. Her eyes locked on the first man, now writhing in pain, blood soaking through the torn sleeve where Kyle had left his mark. Her body trembled, not from fear, but from something older, deeper, rage. Not wild or mindless, but controlled, focused. Her ears flicked forward, then pinned back as she took a step toward the man. Nathan instinctively stepped back, still holding the puppy tight against his chest. Easy, girl. It's over, he said, voice low but uncertain even to his own ears, because for her, it clearly wasn't, not yet. She stepped over broken wood and rusted chain, never taking her eyes off the man. Nathan saw it clearly now, she remembered. Every time she'd cried for her pup, every lash, every cage door slammed shut. And now, with her baby safe and her abuser helpless, something primal had risen inside her. Retribution. Nathan's mind raced. His training told him to stop her, to maintain control of the scene, but his heart, his gut, told him to wait. Kyle stood beside him, watching the mother dog silently, eyes sharp but unmoving. It was as if the two canines understood something Nathan couldn't touch. The mother crept forward slowly, her snarl low and vibrating, a thunder that rolled across the concrete. The man on the ground moaned, tried to push himself up with one hand and muttered something Nathan couldn't hear. That was it. The spark. With a sudden, explosive lunge, she slammed into him, her full weight hitting his chest and sending him backward. She didn't go for his throat. She went for his hands, the ones that had once held chains, delivered blows, and locked her away. Her teeth snapped with precision, not meant to kill, but to punish. Nathan rushed forward, yelling, "Off! Off!" But her fury had taken control. She wasn't a threat to safety. She was justice embodied. She bit again, not savagely, but purposefully, like she was taking back something stolen. The man screamed again, but this time there was no fight in him, only fear. Nathan hesitated at the edge of the moment, torn between duty and empathy. He couldn't let this go on, but he also couldn't forget what she had endured. Every second felt like a lifetime. Kyle moved then, slowly, cautiously, circling around the mother's side, not to attack, but to communicate. His tail low, ears soft, steps respectful. 9 to 9. Nathan crouched near them, his voice steady, but filled with emotion. That's enough, girl. He's done. You've already won. For a moment, nothing changed. Her jaws stayed clamped, her body still vibrating with fury. But then her breathing shifted, her grip loosened, and finally she let go. She stepped back slowly, her body shaking, not in rage now, but in exhaustion. She had done what she needed to do. She had protected her pup. She had spoken in the only language they had ever taught her. Nathan remained still, holding the puppy close as Kyle sat beside the mother like a soldier guarding a fallen comrade. And for the first time, the warehouse went silent again, not from fear, but from something deeper. The storm had passed. The pain had been heard. The flashing lights arrived just minutes later, but to Nathan it felt like hours had passed. Red and blue strobes lit up the cracked walls of the warehouse as officers flooded in, weapons raised, voices sharp and clipped. Medics rushed toward the injured man curled on the ground, his arm a mess of blood and shredded muscle, but Nathan barely looked at him. His focus remained on the two dogs standing in front of him, the ones who had survived something unspeakable. Animal control entered cautiously, leashes and poles in hand, prepared for aggression. But before they could approach, Nathan raised a firm hand. "No," he said with quiet authority. "She's not a threat. Neither of them are." His voice left no room for argument. Kyle stood protectively at the mother's side, his body relaxed but alert, signaling that she was no longer a danger, and the puppy, now tucked safely in Nathan's arms, had stopped shaking. He wasn't crying anymore. His breathing had steadied. Somehow, in the chaos, he understood he was safe now, and so was she. One of the officers approached, lowering his voice. "You good?" Nathan gave a tired nod, though the truth was harder. He was still shaking inside, not from fear but from everything he had just witnessed, the pain, the anger, and that final moment when the mother dog chose to let go. She now lay on the concrete, her frame worn thin, her breathing shallow. Her eyes never strayed far from her pup, but they watched Nathan too, cautious, but not afraid. That's when Eliza, a vet tech from animal control, knelt beside her. She didn't reach out. She didn't speak. She simply placed a soft blanket nearby and waited. Nathan came down to his knees again, careful and quiet. "What's her name?" he asked. Eliza shook her head. No chip, no check, no record. "If I had to guess, she never had one." The words hit Nathan like a punch. No name, no history. No one ever cared enough to give her an identity. She had just been a body, used and forgotten. He looked down at the puppy in his arms, then back at the mother who had given everything to protect him. Somehow, she had kept him alive with nothing, no food, no warmth, no help. Nathan swallowed hard. He reached out gently, letting his hand rest near her paw. She didn't flinch. Slowly, her eyes met his. In that look, he saw all the things she couldn't say, the pain, the strength, the gratitude. "You have one now?" Nathan whispered. A name. He didn't rush it. The word came to him like something rising from deep inside, a place long buried under uniforms and duty. "Rhea," he said softly. "It means strength. That's who you are." Eliza gave a small nod, her expression softening. And just like that, she wasn't a cage number anymore. She wasn't a survivor with no face. She was Rhea, a mother, a fighter, a soul worth knowing. As dawn crept in through the broken windows, painting the warehouse with a soft golden light, Nathan looked around at what had become more than a crime scene. It was a reckoning, a turning point, not just for Rhea and her pup, but for himself. And though the world outside hadn't changed yet, something inside this broken place had. For the first time in a long time, someone was finally seen, and someone else was finally saved. 3 days had passed since the warehouse raid, but for Nathan, it might as well have been a lifetime. He hadn't returned to active duty yet. The chief insisted he take a few days to rest, but rest wasn't coming easy. His sleep was fragmented, haunted by memories that looped in the quiet hours of the night. The crash of metal, the flash of glowing eyes, the sound of a mother's growl laced with pain and love. And most of all, the look in Rhea's eyes when she let go, not just of the man's arm, but of something deeper. Rage, fear, survival instinct. Nathan couldn't stop thinking about that moment. She hadn't stopped because she was forced to. She stopped because she understood. She made a choice. That kind of understanding, that kind of restraint, didn't come from training. It came from something raw and human, or maybe even more than human. He didn't care much for headlines or the politicians who were now parading the bust as a win for justice. For him, justice didn't come in press conferences. It came in the form of a nameless mother dog, lying broken and bloodied, who still chose mercy over revenge. That morning, Nathan found himself standing outside a private animal rescue facility, not the city-run shelter, but one funded by volunteers, tucked just outside the city limits. It was peaceful here. Open space, clean kennels, real care. Kyle waited in the SUV, sensing something in Nathan's silence. Dogs always knew. They didn't need words to understand grief or hesitation. Inside, the scent of antiseptic and kibble greeted him as the receptionist gave a quiet smile. "They're in the back," she said, already knowing who he had come for. As he walked down the hallway, he passed kennels lined with recovering dogs, some wagging their tails hopefully, others still too wounded to trust again. At the last room, he paused. Through the glass, he saw them, Rhea curled protectively around her pup, now named Finn. His coat looked glossier, his eyes brighter, his legs a little sturdier. He was growing, healing. Rhea, though, still carried the weight of it all in her eyes. She wasn't just tired, she was guarded. Nathan entered slowly. She lifted her head. No growl, no bark, just a look. Recognition. He knelt beside her, rested his hand close. Finn wagged his tail and yawned. Nathan let out a soft breath. "You don't belong here," he whispered. "Not in a cage. Not anymore." His voice cracked a little as he said it. "You did your job. You protected him. You survived everything they threw at you. Now it's time someone fights for you." He didn't plan the words. They just came. Honest, unfiltered, real. "I want to adopt you," he said, glancing at Finn, then back at Rhea. "Both of you, if you'll let me." She didn't move at first, just watched him with those dark, knowing eyes. But after a few seconds, her body shifted. She inched closer, lowered her head, and let it rest against his hand. And that was it. The decision had been made. 6 weeks later, the sun was setting behind the line of pine trees near Nathan's home. Kyle chased a tennis ball in the open field. No longer in uniform, just a happy dog, Finn tumbled clumsily through the grass, all floppy ears and joy. Rhea stood nearby, her posture regal and still, tail gently wagging, eyes scanning but no longer haunted. She wasn't the same dog from the warehouse. The fear was gone. The fight had faded. What was left was trust, not blind, but earned. Nathan sat on the porch, dressed in jeans and an old hoodie, watching them. A man who had spent most of his life running toward danger had somehow been saved by the very thing he thought he was saving.